Well, Christopher, this reminds me of that Woody Allen movie Bananas, which is very old now, but at one point the guy who's in charge of the country, which is a sort of banana republic in South America, declares that everyone who is now under 16 will be declared to be 16. And then it sort of goes from there. I mean, this is now, you're going to declare everybody who's under 15 unable to buy cigarettes for the rest of their lives. I just don't see it working.
No, it's really difficult to know when to start with this particular policy. It's illiberal, obviously.
Yeah.
It's kind of almost surreally absurd. You just can't imagine how this is going to pan out over a period of years. I don't think there's ever been a prohibition like it, where you just do it step by step.
Right.
It's very easy to imagine what's going to happen when these 15-year-olds are 25 or 35 or 45. It's going to seem ridiculous.
Yeah.
And people like me and you are going to be saying to them, I can buy cigarettes, I can buy cigars, you can't.
Right.
And how old are you? OK, you can, but you...
Yes.
It's just...
But worse than that, there'll be people who have got a birthday, you know, 2 days apart.
Right.
Or something.
In the same year at school.
In the same year at school.
Different people who can,
who will be able to go into a shop. One of them can buy them, one of them can't. It's mad, isn't it?
It's mad, and it's not going to work, and it's obviously going to lead to a bigger black market eventually over time. But I think we're going in that direction already. This is the thing.
Yeah.
You know, if I remember Ewan's story correctly, he was vaping black market e-cigarettes, which is why he had his health problems. About a third of the disposable vape market's already illicit. Already?
Yeah.
This is before the vape tax, which is
Right.
going to come in. This is before the ban on disposable vapes, which is going to come in. The government is losing control, or has already lost control of a large part of both the tobacco and the e-cigarette market.
Yeah.
And more prohibitions are not going to make a difference. I'll give you an example. This is a pack of cigarettes.
Right.
Found on the street. I found a few of these on the street
Wow.
where I live.
I don't
no
recognise
branding, no plain packaging. It's not even a legal brand in this country. It's never been a legal brand
Where
anywhere in the world.
Where does it say they've come from?
It's made. I know where it's made. It's made in the Middle East,
Okay.
in the Emirates.
Right.
These are £5 a pack,
Right.
and you don't need to see a man in a pub. You can go into a shop and say, "Sell me your cheapest cigarettes,"
Wow.
and you get something like this. The government is already losing control of a huge amount of both the vape and tobacco markets, and they have this illusion of control.
Yeah.
They think that just by legislating, they can govern. They're not governing.
No.
Trading standards need to be involved with this kind of thing. There's not going to be enough, and there never is with prohibition. There's not going to be enough enforcement to ever deal with the demand.
No, quite. Eve, you're a former smoker and now a vapor, I think.
Yeah.
Is that your experience as well? I mean, I keep walking around. Everywhere I go, there's more vape shops opening up. It's not as if the new laws that are coming in seem to be deterring anyone from selling stuff. They're all over the place.
They never will. It's the same as illegal drugs, and if there were to be a ban on alcohol, it's just going to explode the black market. I mean, cigarettes like this have been sold for years.
Yeah.
You know, under the counter of a lot of shops and corner shops, so it's nothing new. But I think it's just going to increase the problem.
Right.
Personally, I do think the ban on vapes is a good thing, because I do have young children, so I wouldn't like them to get into vaping. It is appealing to young children, you know, the flavours like cherry and cola and that kind of thing. But I think it's an unrealistic goal, and I think the tax that we could have siphoned off of that is could have been put to better uses. For instance, schools, which are massively underfunded.
Yeah.
But now we're going to lose that, and it's going to go into the hands of those selling things on the black market.
Right. And that is always going to be a problem, because I've been listening all day to various pundits, mostly middle-class kind of columnist types, who say things like, oh, nobody smokes anymore. Well, maybe not in their world, but, you know, in plenty of other worlds, people smoke quite a lot, actually. But the trouble is, once again, it's the Westminster bubble, isn't it? Going, oh, well, we don't really know anyone that smokes, so it's not going to affect anyone anyway. But the tax take from actual real cigarettes is still pretty high, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 14 billion,
Yeah.
if you include the VAT.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a fair bit of money, and the government is saying, oh, we're going to save this from lower NHS costs. It's just not true.
No.
I'm afraid the economics of that do not work out.
No.
There used to be... The majority of people in this country used to smoke, and we used to pay relatively little in healthcare costs. As smoking rates have gone down, it has not reduced healthcare costs for the simple reason people live longer. And that's a great thing, that people are living longer, but the ageing population is the thing that's going to bring the NHS down, not smokers. It's an excuse.
Yes. I mean, there's no question that when more people smoked, more people died younger of lung cancer, which actually saved the NHS quite a bit of money. Not a very nice, you know, economic argument to make, but it's true. And also, more than ever, smokers more than paid for their own health care if they did end up having to be treated long-term in the NHS, because they pay so much tax over the years.
Yeah, and I think there was a doctor in the article that was published today saying, you know, he's seen people being amputated, have their legs amputated because of smoking and all sorts of other issues, and he would cry when he went outside to the hospital smoking area, you know, seeing people smoking and not caring about their health. You know, there is that other side to it, but you know,
Well, that's the side that really bothers me, actually. The one
Yeah.
that they say, oh, you shouldn't live like that. You should live in a much more healthy lifestyle. And in fact, we're going to legislate for you to live a more healthy lifestyle. That's not what I want a government to do.
No, and that's not what we're asking for when we vote these people in. We are autonomous enough to make our own choices in life. And if we want to damage our bodies to an extent, if we're not, you know, if it's not causing a massive amount of damage, you can't prevent people from doing so.
No,
It's the same as
I
drinking.
don't think it's got a limit on it at all, do you, Christopher? I mean, I'm not interested in people who say, well, as long as you don't cause any harm to the NHS. Well, then in which case you shouldn't let people drive cars, you shouldn't let people ride motorbikes, you shouldn't let people get on aeroplanes, you shouldn't let people, you know, run up and down stairs. You know, people die jogging in the London Marathon. You should maybe ban the marathon and say, well, that's a bit of a problem, isn't it?
I mean, look, we're not here to serve the NHS.
No.
I know after COVID, a lot of people think we are.
Yeah.
But we're not.
I never did.
We don't live in a dictatorship of doctors, or at least
Right.
we shouldn't do. Obviously,
No.
doctors have strong opinions on this.
Yeah, but they're not always right, by the way.
But equally, liver surgeons have very strong opinions about alcohol.
Yeah.
Are we going to ban alcohol because of the
Right.
cost of the NHS, which is real? There isn't any obvious logical point. I think you have to draw the line somewhere with these things. And you might say, well, what about drugs and so on? Well, personally, I would liberalise some of the drugs as well. But
well, bizarrely, some of the MPs who voted to ban tobacco
to legalise
would
cannabis.
actually legalise cannabis.
Yeah, there's no logic to this at all. This is just feel-good politics. It's virtue signalling politics.
Yeah.
This policy is not going to start to bite even the slightest until 2027.
Yeah.
We're not going to really see the unintended consequences for quite a few years, probably until well into a Starmer premiership, at which point he'll be thinking, oh, I need a legacy as well. Let's ban it for everyone.
Yeah, right. And that'll be the way it goes. And also, ironically, this was nicked from New Zealand, wasn't it? From New Zealand's internal policy, which they've now dropped. They're not even doing it anymore. We've copied it, and now we're the only ones doing it.
I think it's ridiculous, and I think this is a Tory government trying to clutch at everything they can to look, you know, relevant and valid in the eyes of the voter, and it's just making them look stupid.
Right, that's the problem. And just to look at sort of the internal workings of the Tory party for a moment, several people, high-profile types, made a big thing of not voting for it, including Kemi Badenoch, who put out a big thing about how she likes Rishi Sunak generally, but she thinks he's wrong about this. Suella Braverman came back from Brussels in a hurry to vote against it. Deanna Davidson voted against it. Guido Fawkes tonight said, what's the betting that the next Tory leader will be one of those who voted against this particular act? Because it's very unconservative, isn't it?
Yeah, well, obviously it depends on whether they can keep their seats. That
Yeah.
would be the main determinant. But yeah, I mean, there was, I think, 57 Tory MPs voted against it. It's not really that many, is it?
No.
When you consider how many Tory MPs there are, and also how many are not even going to fight the next election.
Yes.
And it's a free vote.
Right.
I would have expected and hoped, really, to see more than that, but credit to those who did.
Yes.
Credit to those from a few other parties that did. I noticed that none of the so-called Liberal Democrats voted against this.
Yeah.
And in the end, Sunak did need to rely on Labour votes, which I think is fitting, given this is basically a Labour policy.
And the funny thing is that the only people who are going to benefit from this are, once again, the local councils who are going to have to hire more trading standards officers to go into shops to find people 100
Well, don't
quid.
forget about the organised criminals.
So, well,
They
they'll
quite well out
benefit,
as well. in
Yeah,
the
they'll
way.
definitely
but that doesn't really
benefit.
cost us any money, you know. I mean, as much as organised criminals are horrible people, you know, it doesn't actually drain the taxpayer, whereas these standards officers will. But, you know, it's going to be a very interesting few years. Maybe we'll get you back in 2027 and see how it's all going.